what America was and what it can become. This is Liberty Town Hall.
You're looking at Glenn Wilson. My name is Greg Marshall. Sorry about that. Welcome to Liberty Town Hall. Hey, check out our website anytime, libertytownhall.com. We'd be grateful to get a chance to talk to you today.
Yeah, friend us on Facebook as well. Absolutely.
Please.
Yeah, share it. Absolutely. Get the word out there. It's up to you guys to get the word out there. We're here to present the information and to talk about the issues nobody wants to, but it's really all about you. So join us on Facebook and online.
We've been very reluctant to join on Twitter, though. It's just, I don't know how many people are really going to say, Glenn having this for dinner with a nice picture on it. It's just something not right about Twitter. I can't get there. I don't know.
You just don't get enough in a couple hundred or 144 characters or whatever. You just can't really get a message across under Twitter. But
well, you can. It's just the subject matter gets to be boring.
Well, it isn't going to be.
I'm driving my Mustang today. It just doesn't add up.
It doesn't talk about the sacrifices the founding fathers made. That's for sure.
And that's what we're going to hit on today. Another stirring episode of that. We already did one episode talking about some of the founders. We're going to talk about some more in today's episode as well. So we're really
amazing sacrifices. They give up. They're willing
scary
to give up.
How powerful they were. These people were, and how much they were willing to give up.
Right. It's like John Henry when he signed great big in the middle of it. He had a lot to lose. He was a very prominent member and a very wealthy person in society, and he risked it all. Absolutely.
He did indeed.
And for what? So somebody can get an Obama phone?
Well, you got to admit, I mean, the country has lasted, for 200 years and done very well. I mean, this country's went for over 200 years, and we've been fighting the battle, and I suspect highly the founders would be amazed at how long the country did last. Yeah, we're in a state of decline right now, there's no doubt. Can we turn it around? Yeah.
Only by changing the morals in the society back to where people are personally responsible for their own actions. People take
and
ownership.
Want to be,
and
not
want
that
to
they
be.
are. The want to be is the key. I want to be responsible for my family. I want to be responsible for my neighborhood and help others because I'm their friend, not because I'm trying to use and abuse somebody. I want to make a difference in society because it's the right thing to do. Instead of becoming an I problem, it becomes an I solution.
Well, as much as I hate to agree with the liberal side of the ball game, one quote that was made was, ask what you can do for your country, not what your country can do for you. That whole concept is lost.
A little paraphrase of John Kennedy there.
Yep.
We'll continue. There's a lot to talk about here today on Liberty Town Hall. Liberty Town Hall is back. I'm Greg Marshall. There's Glenn Wilson. We're talking today another episode about the sacrifices that the founders and particularly the signers of the Declaration put together as far as how this nation was going to operate and why we were getting away. And it doesn't come without a big sacrifice. We'll talk about it here right now. Let me give you one here, Glenn, and get your thoughts on it. Francis Lewis had his home and everything that he had destroyed, including his wife that was imprisoned, according to reports. Now, his Long Island home was apparently destroyed. Probably some of his New York City properties were destroyed too. His business turned over to his son, but it still was a source of income, and it apparently survived the war intact. Good for him on that part.
So lucky.
Yep, and that's where he was able to rebuild some. Now, Mrs. Lewis refused the order given to all Long Islanders to leave the island. He was in Philadelphia attending to his duties in Congress at the time, so she just sat on there, and she ended up getting captured and imprisoned. Most people don't know that she was later exchanged for the wives of two British officials who the Americans have captured. Now, her health, although probably adversely affected by the imprisonment, had been failing for years, and she died about 2 years after her exchange in Philadelphia.
So at least she come home before she passed away.
She did come home, yeah. How about Richard Stockton? He signed the Declaration, was captured and mistreated, and his health broken to the extent that he died at 51. His estate was pillaged, according to reports. Mm-hmm. But he wasn't alone, in that he was only one of the 5 signers captured and was not a military prisoner of war. He spent a couple of months in prison. His release, reported in various places as being obtained by an exchange or signing an oath to cease rebellion activities. After about a year after his release, he began fighting lip cancer. That took his life in 2 more years. His estate in Princeton was pillaged by soldiers from both sides as they passed through.
From both sides?
Yep. One of George Washington's letters asked American soldiers to return any of Stockton's letters or papers that they might have picked up. So good for him on that. Tried to do the right thing at the end.
I still think there's some out there that he wrote that never will show back up.
I would say that's true, or it might show up in a way you never expect. It's like, whoa, what's this? Thomas Hayward Jr. was captured when Charleston fell, according to reports. When it fell, all the officers of the rebel army were paroled, rather. But then shortly after, the British had second thoughts and ordered them all rounded up.
Right.
Hayward and Rutledge and Middleton were all officers. Now,
let you go and then, well, wait a minute, that wasn't such a good idea. Better go get you again.
Yep. John Hart was driven from his wife's bedside while she was dying. Their 13 children fled in all directions from their lives. His fields and grist mills laid to waste. More than a year he had to live in forests and caves, according to the poem of the day.
These are the rich men.
Yes.
These are the rich people, the pillars of society.
Yep.
Underneath British rule.
To give you the details, Hart's wife died a month before the invasion. The British invaded New Jersey, so that was a little stretch from the poetry days. His children were grown, though, and only 2 were still minors. So they did separate in all directions, but most of them were grown to do so.
Do you think people today would give up this much, Greg?
No.
Do you think people
Not
care
yet.
about liberty? I mean, do we have to have liberty taken so far from us before people are willing to do this?
We have to hurt. And the one thing that they've been doing about taking liberty away, they've been replacing liberty with safety this time much more so. And until people start, I don't want people to hurt, but until people start hurting, then that's when things change. The British were, in those days, were absolutely ruthless as far as how they treated colonists that got in their way, and not just here, but that went all the way into pre-World War II days, where if you were doing some ugly stuff, the British would do some ugly stuff back. I mean, you want to talk about in the Muslim day, some of the Muslim countries that they held, they would take to taking the Muslims after they were killed and gutting a hog and sticking the body inside the carcass of the hog and burying it. As you know, Muslims think if you touch on hog, you don't go to heaven. Now, they were already dead. It may not affect anything. I don't know how that's set up, but at the same time, that had to be at least highly offensive and scary to those around them, and that kept order.
Well, the problem is some people don't forget these things. And so, for example, the Muslims, for example, they'll still hold us today accountable for those actions back then as well.
But we didn't even do it. It was the British that did it.
Well, and we fired the British. We said, you're out of here. So, and again, we agree, they're not doing so good here. So, anyway, who else we got on this list? Because these are very important people of the time that sacrificed everything so that we could have liberty. So, who else we got on this list?
Lewis Morris saw his land destroyed and his family scattered, according to reports.
His couple of them got killed too, right?
His property was one of those contested areas of Westchester County, New York. His son, Lewis Morris Jr., wrote extensively about what was going to happen to the family and the farm in the upcoming attack. His family was scattered.
And he was right.
Yep. His children were mostly grown, just like the other gentleman I referred earlier, and 3 of his sons served in the Continental Army. His wife and his younger children went to live with friends when the Continental Army moved onto the property.
Well,
and then his wife later joined him in Philadelphia. Now, after the war, they returned to and rebuilt the home to its magnificence, which is shown to visitors today as a museum piece. He died there of his family in 1798.
It reminds me of Benjamin Franklin. Although he was one of the leaders and actually brought in the French and everything else, it tore his personal family up. He lost contact with his son, and they never really spoke again after this, because his son thought that the British rule was the way to go still, and he backed the British, and his father, Benjamin Franklin, said, no, this is all messed up, and we're going to give up everything to protect liberty. And that was a rift inside of his own family. So although some things are taken from these people, some things are pulled from him from within, and he lost from within his own family. That's another sacrifice that most people don't understand. It divided families much like the Civil War did.
Oh, exactly. Or as it's referred to properly, the war against northern aggression.
There you go. Right.
Or some people call it even the war against corporate aggression.
We have another segment coming up here, and we're going to get into some more founding fathers that have sacrificed, right, Greg?
Indeed we are. Stand by, we'll continue. That's Glenn Wilson. I'm Greg Marshall on Liberty Town Hall.
And thank you for staying with us today on Liberty Town Halls. We're discussing the sacrifices that were made in order for us to have liberties here today. Greg, this is an amazing list. You're going through the Founding Fathers and talking a little bit about each of them as we go. Who's next on the list? This is really powerful stuff.
This list in particular is about those of the Declaration of Independence and those who signed it. Not every single one we're going through, but many we are today, including Philip Livingston. According to a poem from the 50s written that Paul Harvey made famous, he died within a few months from the hardships of the war. Now, he died in York, Pennsylvania in 1778 on June 12th of a disease at that time called dropsy. He attended Congress, but he took a few months leave for his illness before he passed away. John Hancock, history remembers him due to a quirk of fate rather than anything he stood for, as you remember.
Because he was the first one to sign it, and he did it.
No,
in
he's the
letters.
big one that signed it. He's the one that signed it with the big, bold giant. He
right
did
at
it
the top.
kind of vanity because he wanted his to tower over everybody else's at the time.
Well, he had a lot to risk, too.
He did. And here's an example of that. He was one of the wealthiest men in New England.
Yep.
But he stood outside of Boston one terrible night of the war, and it was a bad one. And he said, this is a direct quote that's been attested to him for a long period of time. It said, "Burn Boston, though it makes John Hancock a beggar, if the public good requires it." Now, he was talking about there was a committee of safety who were meeting, and they were suggesting that burning Boston was a means of saving it from the British itself back in 1775.
Mm-hmm.
And
But
so
the
that's
whole
where some of
meaning
that's
of
where
what
the
he's saying-
concept comes from.
Burn everything I have, destroy everything I have, if that's what it's going to take to get liberty protected for our own self-worth, our own sense of honor and pride, and our own sense of achievements and what we can do with our lives. He's saying, take everything. It doesn't matter as long as we end up with liberty at the end. I think that's just an amazing statement from one of the wealthiest guys.
9 people died before the revolution was ended in 1783, and of the 12 died in the next decade. Among them was an octogenarian, 2 septarians. None of them were under 44. 19 years after signing, only half were still alive.
Right.
So that kind of gives you a concept.
How many were
on
actually
that.
killed by the British or during the war? Over half of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
5 were captured by the British and tortured before they died. Only 1 was captured because he signed it. Richard Stockton was arrested by loyalists and turned over to the British to be held in prisoners. The other 4 were prisoners of war. That's kind of the breakdown.
Right. They're actually
on that, so.
rolling up their sleeves and fighting as well as signing their wealth and pledging everything.
Exactly.
Right.
12 had their homes from Rhode Island to Charleston ransacked, looted, occupied by the enemy, or burned, which was quite normal, though. I mean, that's the thing, going back to the earlier conversations we've had in a previous show, and this one, is that both armies would loot whatever they could to continue to function and fight. It was just, unfortunately, that's what they call the spoils of war. Spoils of war are not always a big thing, Glenn, where it comes into, oh, wow, look what we found, bars of gold. And then it was really just, what can we salvage and scavenge to help in the war effort and help keep us going.
Right. Keep it going.
And believe me, it still happens today. If you've got a military incursion into a large area, I guarantee if you break into a property, you're going to scound for what you have to be able to make it.
Well,
you know that from your military service.
Even World War II, people were allowed to take spoils of war and package them up and ship them home. I mean, that was totally acceptable practice even in World War II. So in 1940s, we're still doing exactly the same thing. Now, I think soldiers now are prevented from taking spoils of war. I don't believe that the soldiers are allowed to take stuff they find and ship it back anymore. But I think the difference of the spoils mentality wasn't, like you said, it wasn't just about making yourself rich with the spoils. It was about being able to utilize these tools to continue their efforts.
Yes.
That was the main spoils of the war.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
And of course, 2 lost their sons in the army. 1 had 2 sons captured. And that's just a concept of what some of the signers of the Declaration actually went through.
I think people need to read the Declaration of Independence and understand the words that it's saying. Actually, don't change the words. Look at what the words say at the time. We talked about change the word, change the world. Don't change the word. Don't change the meaning. Take it for what it says. It's pretty blunt, pretty straight, and pretty clear, I think, that these liberties that they're talking about, these natural rights, these are bestowed upon us by God, our Creator. And it says it quite clearly. So, again, when you look at it from that point of view, they were saying that we are a religious nation, that you can't have...
They were saying we served a Christian God.
Well,
I mean, literally. I mean, that's exactly.
They're saying
they were
that these
going
rights
that far.
are given to us by God, and they're willing to give up everything to protect those rights that we can have them here today. And I ask, what are we really willing to put up with today? I mean, are we really going to pledge our fortunes? Are we really going to actually go knock door to door?
We
go
won't
knock on
even
every
pledge
door?
our vote.
Right.
Millions didn't show up in the last election, Glenn.
And that's
Tens
shameful.
of millions didn't show up in the last election.
I think it's
because they just
disgraceful.
weren't interested. Most states had a very low voter turnout in this last election. The states that had big ballot initiatives were the ones where high voter turnout came out, and that was a handful. Everybody else, incredibly low turnout.
It's like
Sad.
California. Nobody wants to go vote because it's going to go blue no matter what they do. Well, that's not true, Greg.
No, it's not.
If the people got off their couches, quit eating their Doritos long enough to go down and vote, right? We would have
Can we get a check, by the way, for that?
Doritos, yeah, there you go, right? But now seriously, if they would get off their couch and pay just a little bit of attention and say, this is worth defending for my children and my grandchildren.
That Constitution,
Yeah, it's a simple document, very easy to read. It's supposed to be the
And it's
Springwell
not a
Line.
living document. We have to be very careful about that.
Right.
Let's do a show on a living document sometime soon, explain
Right.
that a little bit.
Well,
We've got to run for this segment. Appreciate it. Maybe we'll hit it in the close for a moment. This is Liberty Town Hall. The Constitution is a living document.
No, it's not.
The Constitution is a living document.
No, it's not.
The Constitution is a living document.
No, it's pretty well set in stone here. I can read.
Let's explain for a second on that. There's a reason I said this.
There's a reason why I reviewed it.
Exactly, and that's okay. Let's talk about it for just a minute. What do they mean by a living document?
Change
It sounds
the
good on paper, doesn't it? It sounds wonderful on paper. A living document. Who is against a living document? Who's against a living plant? Who's against a living person? It sounds wonderful if you don't know the definition. The definition is quite hideous. A living document absolutely means this.
It can change whenever they want it.
Well, let's get more specific. It means that the Constitution, Glenn's right in that, in what his definition, but I want to get specific with you. It means that somebody can look at the Constitution. This is just a broader example of what he just said. Someone can change the words based on the current meaning in society. That as the language evolves and as the language dumbs down, really, as that happens, then obviously the meaning of the words in the very Constitution itself must change. That is the kind of thing we have to fight. The dumbing down of the language puts us in a position where we dumb down the Constitution, we dumb down laws, we dumb down societal norms, we dumb down everything. They didn't mean that, they didn't mean this doesn't mean that.
And you dumb it down and you destroy the meaning.
Well,
It's just that simple. It's like the Second Amendment. It's very clear. A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. I mean, think about it right there. They're saying that people need to be, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. There's nothing to live in to change about it. It's pretty clear. Shall not be infringed. One sentence, 3 commas, simple as can be. And yet they
but you
change
see,
it
if you
because
look
it's living.
today, militia, oh no, the militia means the National Guard. It doesn't mean
no,
individuals.
Absolutely not.
Of course it means individuals, because the militia always is individuals.
It was the militia that stood up against the government at the time.
If you and I
This is the meat and
decide
potatoes.
that the county we're sitting in right now is under imminent threat and danger from a radical gang that is coming in here and terrorizing the community and kidnapping people.
Civilians have the right to step up and defend themselves.
Exactly.
That's
If you
exactly
and
what
I
about-
and everybody on the road that we are standing on right now, or that our building is just outside of right now, decide to gather together, another word that is synonymous with militia is posse.
Well,
Those
yeah.
kind of things are put together. I mean, that we would form our own militia from the 10, 20, 30 people that are
And
on
it-
this road,
people say,
and
well,
that's
you
a militia
can't-
in and of
yeah, but
itself.
people say this is, right to bear arms. One lawyer even described it to me, well, you have a right to roll up your sleeve and have bear arms. Well, that's just ridiculous, right? I mean, but
Welcome to the living document example.
again, you got weapons of all natures. People had cannons in their front yards, for crying out loud.
Yes,
so,
they did.
Don't change it. People died for this. People sacrificed everything so that you right now could understand this. And I know we're out of time today, Greg, and we've got to wrap it up, but God bless this America.
Indeed. We'll talk about this again another time. Thanks for watching Liberty Town Hall.
But what do we mean by the American Revolution? Do we mean the American War? The Revolution was effected before the war commenced. The Revolution was in the minds and hearts of the people, a change in their religious sentiments, of their duties and obligations. This radical change in the principles, opinions, and sentiments and affections of the people was the real American Revolution. A letter to H. Niles from John Adams, February 13th, 1818.